Hello, everybody, and welcome to That Wrestling Show, the podcast where all pro wrestling matters. I am your host, Bill Yankovi, and this week, going to be reviewing the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, give you all my thoughts on the event and what I liked, what I didn't what I disliked, I guess I should say. I didn't dislike would be that I like. Also, we're going to get into some wrestling news and going to be wondering why WWE hired someone that admitted they've never watched wrestling. Before I begin, I want to send my thoughts and prayers to everyone down in the Miami area with the tragedy that took place late Wednesday night into Thursday morning with the apartment complex. And for those who have not been keeping up to date as of late, the current number, unfortunately, 4 have died and over 150 have not been accounted for. So please, if you can, everyone, just keep everyone who's affected by this in your thoughts and prayers during a very, very difficult time. Also want to mention that we lost a female wrestler in the community earlier this week, Melissa Coates, who some of you may remember as Super Genie, passed away on Wednesday at the age of 50 years old. This one's kind of a sad story because she had been with Sabu for a very long time, and a couple of months ago, actually 6-7 months ago, she ended up having to have her one of her legs amputated and passed away at the age of 50 years old. Again, thoughts go out to everyone who has been friends with Melissa Coates over the last several years, and it's kind of sad when you hear someone dying, but to die at 50, that's just makes you, and the thing is, she had her leg amputated, and I guess the effects of the amputation of the leg is what really kind of did her in, I guess would be the way to put it. So, but again, Melissa Coates, aka Super Genie, passed away at the age of 50. WWE has announced earlier today that they are going back to the United Kingdom this September with a 4-show tour. Their first show will be on Sunday, September the 19th in Newcastle at the Utilita Arena. On Monday, September 20th, will be in London, England at the O2. It would not surprise me if that is an episode of Raw right there. Oh, actually, no. Okay, I'm sorry. This is for the SmackDown roster. So these are all house shows. September 21st, they're going to be in Cardiff, Wales at the Motor Point Arena. And on Wednesday, September 22nd, they're going to be in Glasgow, Scotland at the SSE Hydro. Advertised as of this moment include Roman Reigns, Bianca Belair, Big E, Sasha Banks, Bayley, and the Usos. WWE was set for a UK tour in May last year, but never happened because of the pandemic. So if you live in Newcastle, London, Cardiff, or Glasgow, you're going to be getting WWE shows coming up in September. The date for when the tickets go on sale, let me see. Did they announce a date? Because I did not. Oh, okay. They are for sale right now. So to our British listeners, if you live in one of the 4 cities that were mentioned a moment ago, you can buy tickets to go see the WWE, well, the SmackDown brand in particular, on tour. Sticking with WWE, and this is kind of going to go along with AEW because I did not talk about this last week. WWE announced this week that they are returning to Madison Square Garden for the first time in over a year and a half. The date is Friday, September the 10th. It will be an episode of SmackDown that will be held in Madison Square Garden. Like I said, the last time they were at Madison Square Garden was in December of 2019. They had scheduled a house show in March 2020, but that did not happen because of the pandemic. And this is kind of good timing if you are a wrestling fan, because, especially in the New York area, because later in September, AEW will be making their New York City debut in Flushing, in Flushings in New York at the Arthur Ashe Stadium, and it's going to be September 22nd. That show, and this is a pretty big deal because you're doing this show at a tennis stadium, but the capacity is big enough that they could get a very good crowd. Tickets are available right now for the New York debut of AEW. Showtime starts at 7 p.m. So things are kicking. They're, rocking and rolling. And we're going to see some live crowds coming up very, very soon. All Japan Pro Wrestling, we don't get a chance to talk about them very much, but they were in the news towards the end of last week, kind of when when last week's episode aired. Suwama, who was was at the time the Triple Crown Heavyweight Champion, which is their top title in All Japan Pro Wrestling, had to vacate the title because he had tested positive for COVID-19. So, All Japan Pro Wrestling announced earlier this week that they have figured out a way to determine who will be crowned the new Triple Crown Heavyweight Champion. At their show this Saturday, which is called Champions Night in Tokyo, there's going to be a 3-person battle. That is what it is being called, between Jake Lee, Kento Miyahara, and Yuma Aoyagi. So how this is going to work is each individual, or each person is going to face each other. And they're going to face off in singles matches. And it will take place one after another. The object of the match is to be the first wrestler to win 2 matches in a row. You do that, you win the Triple Crown Heavyweight title. A lottery will be held before the show to determine the order of the matches. Now, how this came about. Now, Jake Lee was the scheduled next in line contender to the Triple Crown Heavyweight title. Miyahara and Aoyagi were scheduled to defend the All Japan World Tag Team titles on that show against Koji Doi and Kuma Arashi. But because the tag champs are in this unique situation, the tag title match has been postponed to a later date. So, this is kind of an interesting situation, and, by the end of the week, or by the end of the weekend, we will know for sure. I had a little spit up there. We will know for sure who the new Triple Crown Heavyweight Champion will be in All Japan Pro Wrestling. So, going to be, like I said, that's going to be a very interesting situation. I'm going to keep my eye on it as far as who's going to win the title, because Suwama was on, by at the time that he had to vacate the title, all-time record for All Japan Pro Wrestling, and that's 32 years of history right there. Considering the individuals who have held the title in the past, it's kind of like the NWA, where it's like it's a who's who of people that have held the Triple Crown heavyweight title. New Japan Pro Wrestling announced this week that they are going to have their first U.S. show in a little over a year on August the 14th. It's going to be in Los Angeles at the Torch at the Los Angeles Coliseum. Jon Moxley is scheduled to be at the show, so I would imagine more than likely that he will be defending the IWGP United States title on that show. So New Japan will be having their first, U.S. show with fans in quite some time. Okay, I want to talk about something I read yesterday, and this is 100% true story, because I really don't know how to put this. And before I get into this story, this woman, this poor woman, has been getting ripped left and right. And does she deserve it? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? So, WWE recently hired a new writer by the name of Kenise Mobley. That's her name. And I want to give you her credentials, where she's worked before, being hired by WWE. She's a stand-up comedian and has been featured on NBC, The Tonight Show, and Vice, which is where Dark Side of the Ring is aired. So she was recently on a podcast, and she discussed her new role with WWE. The response that she gets, or that she says, is just scratching your head. So I will read what she said. And I quote, "Yes, I have just been hired by WWE. Given the things that you know about me and my entire life and what I'm into, yes, that's surprising. Yes, also a surprise for me. They did not require me to know anything about wrestling, but I do have a background in film production and comedy writing, and they're like, perfect, come on in." Okay, I'm going to stop right there. You are the WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment, and you hire somebody to be, on your writing team, and you tell them that they don't need to have any knowledge of wrestling? That would be like if some scientist hired me and was like, "Oh, you don't need to know science, we'll just take you." Or, hey, maybe you're, on one of the TV channels, like, you don't need to know, or, you don't need to know politics and, the history of politicians, but we'll hire you. Are you freaking kidding me? I don't know who I feel worse for. Do I feel bad for this woman for admitting the WWE said, oh, you don't need to know about wrestling? Or the person that told her, hey, you don't need to know about wrestling, but maybe you should keep it a secret. I don't know if they said that maybe you need to keep it a secret. I doubt that very highly. And then we get to this second paragraph that I'm going to read. So I am on the Monday Night Raw team. So there's Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. And the people I know that are on it are Bobby. His name is either Bobby Ashley or Bobby Lashley. And I really should know that. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Anyway, he's like this giant black guy, and he and the people who are part of his crew, I know that they call, or at least as of last year, they called themselves the Hurt Business. The Hurt Business. They wear suits and they're like, we're cool. Oh my god. Oh my god. First off, I feel bad for this woman. I really do. I understand you're trying to get a job in the field that you are best in, which is writing. I would think, and again, this is just me saying this, I would think once you get hired that maybe you should look into where you're working, study, the people that are there, study the roster, study the names of the people, the announcers, the wrestlers, the personalities, because from what I could tell, this woman didn't remember the name of the main guy. Bobby Ashley, that hot new superstar, Bobby Ashley. Oh, why? See, this is here. Okay, and again, I got nothing against this young lady, but if I'm WWE, like if I own WWE, and I think I've said this on the air before, and I've said it to some friends, the first thing I do if I own WWE is I would fire every single writer. This is not Hollywood. This is professional wrestling. There are people there who have the knowledge of the business, who have worked in the business. Let them come up with a show. Why the hell have we needed writers for so many years, and now we're using Hollywood writers? And now we have someone who's never even watched wrestling and can't even remember the name of their world champion. Oh my god, this is beyond terrible. This is why WWE can't be taken seriously by wrestling fans, because of stuff like this. And again, I've said this a bunch of times. The roster of talent they have is one of the best rosters they've ever had in the company's history. And basically it's being decided by a bunch of morons. It really is. This is why they're getting the low ratings. This is why ticket sales are not as big as they used to be. This is a perfect example. When you don't have people that know the bit, or at least know something about wrestling. I'm not saying that you have to know everything about the business, but just a little bit of knowledge of wrestling. That's where it kills you. It really is. I mean, this is why people leave WWE, watch AEW, watch Ring of Honor, watch Impact, watch New Japan, watch Major League Wrestling, because they're sick and tired of all this crap. You know, like this. This is what's hurting WWE. And it's like, well, here's the perfect example right there. The person doesn't even know the name of the champion. Bobby Ashley. Bobby Ashley. That's all I'm going to say. Bobby Ashley. Well, we had a pay-per-view on Sunday night, and it was actually a decent show. It was a decent show. So I'm going to go through each match from Hell in a Cell and give you guys my rating, and also going to tell you what Dave Meltzer thought of the match, and also what CBS Sports thought of the matches. And going to start off with the pre-show match, Mandy Rose against Natalya. This, surprisingly, was not that bad of a match. It was actually kind of an enjoyable match. It started out slow, but as time went by, it happened to get better, and towards the end, it was a good match. Natalya got the win with the sharpshooter, but this might have been the best Mandy Rose match, if you can believe it. And I hope you do, because it was actually a good match. I gave the match a D+, but like I said, it was a good match. Meltzer gave this 3 stars. CBS Sports gave it a B-. Okay. Now we go to the pay-per-view, and we start with the SmackDown Women's Championship match inside Hell in a Cell. Bianca Belair defending against Bayley. Told a good story. This, told a good story. Bayley, on a couple of occasions, tried to use Bianca's hair to her disadvantage, but it ended up being a disadvantage to Bayley. And Bayley, I'm going to say this. If Pat McAfee had been on commentary for every match on this pay-per-view, I would have hated this pay-per-view. Because Pat McAfee is so unbearable during the show. Because there's a spot where Bayley has a kendo stick, and she hits Bianca with the kendo stick. And Pat McAfee is like, oh, she hit her with the double kendo stick. She remembered from last time. She hit her with a double kendo stick. It's one stick. And then Bayley goes under the ring, and she finally pulls out the double kendo stick. And Pat's like, oh, there it is. There's the double kendo stick. Jesus Christmas. So she ends up pulling 2 out, but it backfires on her. Like I said, this is a really good back and forth match. I liked the ending. Bianca has Bayley on a ladder, tries to go, I guess, for a splash of some kind, but Bayley rolls out of the way, but Bianca does a roll of her own, and she comes back and hits this back senton onto the ladder, and Bayley's on top of the ladder, so it's like kind of, hurt twice. And then Bianca hits the KOD, the Kiss of Death, onto the ladder to get the 3 count and the victory to retain the SmackDown Women's title. This ended up being a good match. This was a really good match. Let me see. Yeah, this might have been the best women's match of the show. And going to point out a couple of notes here in a little bit, but I gave this match a B. I thought it was a good, solid match. Good back and forth. Despite my hatred of the commentary, which I'm going to point out during the next match, this was a good match. This was a good match. So now we go to Seth Rollins and Cesaro, and again, this is another good match. Cesaro comes out to the ring, Rollins attacks Cesaro from behind before the match even starts, and we get a really good match. But again, Pat McAfee is ticking me off. Not this time because of what he says, but because of what he's doing. He is standing while watching on the monitor and doing his commentary. And it's like, okay, if the action is coming towards you, okay, I get it. You have to stand up. But when you have two guys in the ring and they're many feet away from you, you do not need to be standing up and commentating, unless that's how he commentates, and maybe that's how it is. If that's his way of commentating, then okay, I will learn to accept it. But it just annoyed the hell out of me. But this match did not annoy the hell out of me, because this was a really good match. Seth worked on Cesaro's arm and shoulder, but Cesaro was coming back. He was able to do the swing. Seriously, a bunch of near falls. And then we get to the ending where Cesaro hits a stomp on Rollins' arm, and then Rollins all of a sudden gets a quick small package. 1, 2, 3. Seth Rollins wins the match, and I really liked the ending, and that's going to be something where I'm going to say throughout the night, it's like the ending was really good. Okay, so I want to backtrack real quick. The Hell in a Cell match, I gave that a B. Meltzer gave it 3.5. CBS Sports gave it a B+. With Cesaro and Seth, I gave that match a B. Meltzer gave it 3.5. CBS Sports gave it a B. Okay. Then we go to the next match, which is Shayna Baszler against Alexa Bliss. And it's like, okay, I'm not expecting this to be a terrific match. It wasn't the worst match of the year, believe me. I've seen worse. It was what it was. Let's just call it what it is. This match was what it was. And the whole story to the match is Alexa is trying to get people under her spell. Shayna knows it right away, and she covers her eyes. Reginald tries to interfere a couple of times. Then we get the spot where Alexa has Nia Jax's attention. And this actually was kind of a funny spot, because Alexa has Nia's attention. Alexa is has Nia hypnotized. Raises her hand. Nia raises her hand. Reginald is talking to Nia. And, he's trying to say something to her. Alexa moves her hand across to make like a slap motion. And Nia slaps Reginald, which was kind of a funny spot. And then Alexa yells and Nia yells at the same time, which, again, that was kind of a funny spot. But, Shayna does everything she can to win this match, but Alexa Bliss just out creeps her, I guess would be the right way. Alexa Bliss hits a Sister Abigail DDT-like move, and then hits Twisted Bliss to get the win. This was my least favorite match, but like I said, it could have been worse. It really could have been worse. So I gave this a D. Meltzer gave it a star. CBS Sports gave it a D. Then we go to Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, got one more match with McAfee, and then I'm good the rest of the night. This is a good match, and Kevin Owens sells the throat injury from a few nights earlier when he took like the night. It's called the Nigerian nail, but it's like the Asiatic spike with the thumb. And Zayn kind of takes advantage of Owens' lack of breathing, and anytime Owens has the momentum, he stops and tries to catch his breath. It's just a good match between Zayn and Owens. I can't remember a time anywhere, whether it be Ring of Honor, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, WWE, to name a few, NXT. I can't think of a time those two do not have a bad match. I really can't think of a time they've ever had a bad match. So Sami Zayn hits the haluva kick onto Owens in the corner to get the win. Pretty good match. I gave this a C+. I was tempted to give it a B-, but there was something about it that just made me go C+. Meltzer gave this 3 3/4. CBS Sports gave it a B+. Kevin Owens did go onto Twitter after the show saying that he's taking time off. Apparently this is storyline related, so we'll see Kevin in a little bit. So now that Pat McAfee is going to be no longer on my TV for the rest of the night, and I don't have to drive myself crazy about him standing while commentating, the Raw Women's Championship match is next. Rhea Ripley defends against Charlotte Flair. The beginning of the match is kind of interesting because after they do the introductions, the referee raises the belt. Charlotte goes and grabs the belt, and then she nails Rhea Ripley with the belt. And it's kind of a weird beginning because, she does this, and the ref asks, like, do you want to do the match? Do you want to do the match? Which obviously she does. And then Flair goes on the attack early, tries to get an early pin victory. Rhea gets out of the way. And then Charlotte is like, that's lesson number 2! That's lesson number 2! Okay, was the taking of the belt and hitting Rhea lesson number 1? Because I didn't hear her say that out loud. But anyway, this is a good match. I enjoyed the match. Charlotte is on the offense going after the leg of Rhea Ripley, and every time Rhea tries to get up to do something, Charlotte comes back, and she's doing a good job as a heel. And this is a really good match. Rhea at one point hits the riptide. You think she's got it. 1, 2, Charlotte puts her foot on the rope. So they continue the fight on the floor. Rhea tries a move, but Charlotte catches her, and then she does a kick onto her leg. And then Charlotte goes for the figure 8, and she locks it on, and it's in the middle of the ring. And it's, oh boy, this could be it. Charlotte's going to win the title. But Rhea manages to get to the ropes. And then they eventually roll to the outside of the ring. And then we get the end of the match where Rhea does a couple of punches to Charlotte. Then she grabs the part of the table where, they have like the show logo on it. I guess it's like the covering. I don't know the technical name for it. Hits Charlotte with it. Ref calls for the bell. Charlotte wins by disqualification. After the match, they continue fighting, and they get separated. In a way, you had to kind of know that while Charlotte was going to win the match, there probably was going to be a way that she wasn't going to win the title. There's your way. Rhea found a way to lose the match, but keep the title. And it's like, okay, well, there's gonna have to be another match, down the line with these two, and it will happen at Money in the Bank. We found out the next night on Raw. The ending kind of took it out of me, but this is still a good match. I gave this a B minus. Meltzer gave it 3.25. CBS Sports gave it a B plus. And then we get to the main event. This is the main event, the final pay-per-view match ever in the Thunderdome. Oh, by the way, this is the final pay-per-view in the Thunderdome, for those that had not heard a few times during the show. Drew McIntyre against Bobby Lashley for the WWE title inside Hell in a Cell. This is McIntyre's last shot at the WWE title. If he does not win the title, he does not get another shot at the title as long as Lashley is champion. This was a fantastic match between the two. These guys beat the crap out of each other. And early on, you could see Lashley's inexperience in the cell. McIntyre is just taking complete control, using the steps, hitting Lashley, with it. And it is so good. This match is really good. And, Lashley for a while is in serious trouble. But then MVP throws his cane into the cell, and Lashley uses the cane. And of course, no disqualifications. It's Hell in a Cell. You can get away with that. You can do that. So Lashley has the advantage for a while. Then McIntyre comes back, and Lashley is in trouble again. And Drew is going for the Claymore. He goes for it. He hits it, but he accidentally hits the referee with it. So the referee is out. So now, after a few seconds, McIntyre hits Lashley with the Claymore. However, there's a problem. There's no referee. So McIntyre calls for the referee, who's in control of the door, to unlock the door to get in to be the referee. So McIntyre has the pin. It takes the ref, I'd say, if I had to time it, maybe 30 seconds. And he goes for the count. 1, 2. MVP pulls the referee out of the ring. MVP managed to get himself in the cell. Well, it's no disqualification. You can do that. Except a new referee comes out and he locks the door to the cell. So now MVP is stuck in the cell. And McIntyre goes after him and beats him up. So after that, Lashley is able to make a comeback. And he even does kind of like a choke slam onto Lashley through the table. And then, they fight on the outside, and both men go through a table together. And Lashley manages to get in the ring first, then McIntyre, but McIntyre is able to come back, get it together. Now, the ending to the match. I know there are people that did not like this ending. I am in the minority on this. I loved the ending to this match. And I'll tell you why once I get through the steps. So, McIntyre is setting up for the Claymore. This is going to be it. He hits this, it's over. MVP, who a few minutes ago got beat up, comes back and grabs McIntyre's foot. So as he's fighting MVP, here comes Lashley from behind, schoolboys McIntyre, grabs a handful of tights. 1, 2, 3. Lashley wins. He retains the WWE title, and Drew McIntyre now can no longer compete for the WWE title as long as Lashley is champion. Now, why do I like the ending to this match? Number one, it shows that Bobby Lashley and MVP will do anything to keep the WWE title. number one. And number two, this was such an old school ending to that match where Lashley didn't have to hit the Dominator. He didn't have to put on the Hurt Lock. He just does a schoolboy, grabs the tights, and he's still the champion. I might be in the minority, but I liked the ending to the match. I really did. I gave this an A-. Meltzer gave it 4 stars, and CBS Sports gave it an A- as well. So, we did have a little bit of history made, not only at Hell in a Cell, but within that 24-hour period. This was, and this is also counting the pre-show match, this is the first WWE pay-per-view in history where there were more women's matches on the show than men's. There were 4 women's matches. There were 3 men's matches. The other part of history, Bobby Lashley became the first individual in WWE history to have competed in 2 Hell in a Cell matches within a 24-hour period. The following night on Raw, he fought Xavier Woods inside Hell in a Cell. So Bobby Lashley making history again, being the first person to ever compete in 2 Hell in a Cell matches within a 24-hour period. And that is the review of Hell in a Cell. Let's go to the grades. Let's see what people thought of this show, and it's a split here. It is a tie between a B and a C grade. We had a couple people vote A, and we had a couple people vote D, which, you know what, I can kind of understand the D grade, but I'm going to give this a B. I thought this was a good show. The 2 Hell in a Cell matches were good. The second one was really good. And there really wasn't anything terrible or offensive about the entire show. Now, as far as the best match, or our favorite match, I'm giving this to McIntyre and Lashley. This was a great championship match, a great Hell in a Cell match, and the ramifications, I think, are going to be felt for a little while. Before I wrap up the show for this week and get into the plugs, let's talk about Raw Monday night, because Nikki Cross had kind of a new gimmick where she's now a superhero, and at first I wasn't really sure about it, but then her husband, Killian Dane, who's on NXT, went on Twitter saying this was her idea. She's the one that came up with the gimmick, so I'm basically going to be, you know what? Let her try. Let's see what happens with the gimmick. I hope it really works out for her, because I'm glad she's getting some attention as of late. And who knows, this could be a good thing for her, especially once they get back in front of live crowds. Okay, well, that will do it for the show this week. Let's get into the plugs. If you guys have any questions or comments, send an email, wrestlingman@thatwrestlingshow.com. Follow the show on Twitter @WrestlingShow11. Follow us on Instagram. Just type in That Wrestling Show and you are right there. Join the Facebook group. It is That Wrestling Show fan group. You type that in the search bar and you are right there. And if you can't find it, it's okay. I put the link in the description of each and every episode. And if you like what you heard here and you want a little bit more content, go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/That Wrestling Show, with our highest tier being $3 $3. You can pledge $3 a month or more, and it'll get you so many wonderful things. Now it's time to talk about our friends and other podcasts you guys should check out, starting with Our Vantage Point, the Retro Wrestling Podcast with Joe Murata and Michael Quinn. This week, in the Change Your Mind segment, Ted DiBiase should have been a WWF champion. Do you think so? We'll try to change your mind. Plus, week 4 of the Royal Flush of the worst world title changes, and a review of AWA All-Star Wrestling from August 10th, 1974. That is this week on Our Vantage Point, the Retro Wrestling Podcast. Even though there is right now no new episode of Greetings from Allentown, I do want to mention GFA Live with Peter and Keithy Langston. They do GFA Live. They came out last week with another episode where they watched Stampede Wrestling from June of 1979. So check that out. Greetings from Allentown. Also check out Juice Pro Wrestling, where, believe it or not, this week's episode is hosted by Andre the Giant. Okay, well, he's been summoned to host an episode this week of Juice Pro Wrestling. Check it out anyway. Juice Pro Wrestling Podcast. And check out the new video podcast, the DK and Bill Wrestling Podcast. This week, it's going to come out this weekend. We are going to discuss the career of the Macho Man Randy Savage, and we're going to talk about 1989 through 1991, which I think is a tremendous period for the World Wrestling Federation. So check it out, the DK and Bill Wrestling Podcast. Now, if you're looking for non-wrestling related podcasts, check out The Castle Vault, which is a chronological deep dive of Disney animated films powered by Disney+. This week, they review the 2020 movie Soul. That is this week on The Castle Vault. Also, check out Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, where this week they sit down with Jim Chemo West. He returns back to the podcast, and he's going to talk about having won his first Grammy Award and other exciting accomplishments. That is this week on Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast. Also, check out Sharks Pond, a South Park podcast where I watch, discuss, and review each and every South Park episode. This week, we hit the halfway point of Season 12 with its first half finale, Super Fun Time. That is this week on Sharks Pond, a South Park podcast. And I also want to plug, because I forgot to plug it last week, Coliseum Corner, which is a podcast where I watch and review each and every Coliseum home video the WWF ever did. A new one came out about a week and a half ago. It is Tag Team Champions. It is worth a listen and a good history lesson of the WWF and their tag team division prior to the what they are called the Golden Age of tag team wrestling. So check that one out. Tag Team Champions on Coliseum Corner. Okay, so next week, unfortunately, due to time and all that, I did not get a chance to ask a certain person to be a guest to talk about the women's division. I'm definitely going to do that next week. You guys are going to hear that discussion next week on the podcast, along with any other wrestling news. So everybody have a good, safe weekend, no matter where you are. And come back next week for another episode of That Wrestling Show, the podcast where all pro wrestling matters. And until next time, wrestle on.